So Zoom is preparing to live stream this meeting. It is
Great.
the meeting right now.
Great. We'll be starting in just a little bit. How's everybody tonight? Good to see you. Thank you. You already know to mute yourself when you're not on. That'll cut down on any background noise, but I'm glad you're on this evening. We'll start in about 5 minutes. We're just going to give people.
Good evening, everyone.
And Bishop, you are muted right now. You may need to unmute yourself.
All right, if you're getting on, thanks. If you're getting on, just waiting a little bit, kind of letting people might be running a little late, get on. I had to learn how to do that. We do live stream at church. They said, wait, Bishop, don't start right away. I said, yeah, I start right on the mark. It's 6:30. Let's do this thing. Brother Bruce, don't laugh at me. I got issues. I want to get started, but we want to let those folks that are a little late get on. We'll start in just a little bit. Sister Katie's helping me tonight. They told me I messed up so bad last time. We got some professionals gonna help me out. God is good.
I don't mean to laugh at you, Bishop, but I'm the same way, so I'm laughing at myself.
But Bruce, they didn't get no pushback from me. I didn't fight. I just said, yeah, great. I got a new machine coming. We're gonna have a fight then. I got a new machine from Zoom coming that does all kinds of stuff. I may have to give it to Katie.
Uh-oh.
Well, I think that people ought to be about getting on, and if they're not, they'll catch up. Good evening. Thanks for being on this stream. Thanks for your work for a better Akron. I want to reiterate the fact that I feel called to this work, and I consider it a trust to the city of Akron and to her people. I want you to understand that I was trying to retire, and that the Lord wouldn't let me retire. I'm like, I'm done. Stick a fork in me. But I've been called out of retirement to try to help. I think it's very important. And so far, I'm hearing two kinds of questions of trust and administrative questions. And I hope you will get to know me, and I get to know you much better. You'll know my heart, and you'll know that I don't mean to offend anybody, but I speak pretty direct about the things that are going on. And so let's first deal with questions of trust. The explicit and implicit question that I'm hearing and that I'm intuiting as I talk to people is the mayor and his office directing and controlling this effort? The mayor and his office have been very helpful. I really thank the mayor for this initiative. Other cities aren't doing exactly what we're doing. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to participate. But the mayor and his office have not attempted to control this effort. They are helping me to establish and facilitate this effort. And first, again, I'm going to ask you, I want to start back where we started before. I like to give a lot of clear communication. I want to be as clear as I can. I'm asking you to trust me. Don't trust that I'm perfect. Just trust that I will give this effort as much of my integrity as possible. And I'm going to be very open and frank about it. If you think the mayor is controlling this and you don't know him very well, or perhaps you don't know me very well, I like to work with everybody. I love people, but I'm not anybody's puppet. I'm going to do what I think is best in terms for the city of Akron, and so we'll do that. Second, I'm going to ask you to trust the process. Now, the process that we are establishing will entail researching issues and providing recommendations that can make a structural difference for the future of Akron and for her residents. You see, I think what we've done with some of the protests and things that are going on, they were good, but they've run their course. Now, what kind of changes are going to be made for the future, and what kind of structural changes are going to be made? So that's really important, I think, in this whole process. And then number 3, I'm going to ask you to trust yourself. You, your voices, and the grassroots voices that you believe are important ought to facilitate this direction and the directions of our discussions and our recommendations. So you're going to be very important, an important part of this. I've talked to a number of the chairs, and they aren't trying to drive an agenda. They're trying to facilitate a discussion about what we need to do in the city of Akron, what we need to investigate, what kind of recommendations we can make for a better Akron. Because our work is going to entail some difficult discussions of difficult issues, Katie distributed to you a lecture that I'm going to be giving pretty soon entitled, Why Don't We Hear Each Other? I didn't give you the lecture for you to read it all. It's included because of the definitions that are in there. Those definitions come from Robin DiAngelo's book, What Does It Mean to Be White? Developing White Racial Literacy. She also wrote the book, you probably may be familiar with her latest book, which is White Fragility. She's an expert. And when I heard this, it was really interesting to me. She has a degree in whiteness studies. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but there is. And so she got some definitions. I just want to brush through them so that we can have some common ground. I suggest that we kind of just have these definitions in our mind so that we're on the same page. We're going to be talking about some very difficult topics, and then how do we get together? I'm going to try to set some boundaries so that we are kind of looking at the same thing. Prejudice is learned prejudgment based on stereotypes about a social group that somebody belongs to. Prejudice occurs at an individual level. All humans have learned prejudices. Discrimination is an unfair action towards a social group and its members that's based upon prejudice about the group, and discrimination occurs at the individual level. All humans have to discriminate. We discriminate as a part of being alive. Oppression is group prejudice and discrimination backed by institutional power. The term oppression indicates that one group is in a position to enforce their prejudice and discrimination against another group throughout society. And so the prejudice and discrimination have moved from the individual to the societal level. And discrimination here has a long-term, far-reaching impact. So what you have is prejudice plus discrimination plus power equals oppression. And then racism is a form of oppression in which one racial group dominates others. In the United States, the dominant group is white. Therefore, racism is white racial and cultural prejudice and discrimination, supported intentionally or unintentionally by institutional power and authority, and used to the advantage of whites and the disadvantage of people who are not white. Consequently, just so you'll know what we talk about, when I talk about racism, I've done a lot of talking about it, a lot of teaching, a lot of workshops, a lot of reading. I talk about it from an institutional perspective, while prejudice, I talk about from a personal perspective. All of us have prejudices, but racism is institutional oppression. And so I've been in workshops where I've gotten some pushback because people, said that, African Americans are racist too. African Americans, according to this definition, cannot be racist. They can be prejudiced. They can discriminate, they can do all those things, but they don't have the power to be racist. Racism is an institutional system of oppression. So racism impacts us all. It's not something we choose. It operates perpetually. Our choice is how do we respond to it. People I really don't deal with basically as racist. Most are not explicitly racist, but we all have implicit biases. You don't have to agree with everything I just stated. I'm just trying to set a baseline so that when we start discussing these things, we are somewhere close to understanding or having a vocabulary of talking about the same things in similar terms so we can have the discussion. We have a lot of people that are involved, and that means a lot of diversity, a lot of points of view, and we welcome that. We want that, but we have to have some common ground in order to be able to have these kinds of discussions. So the purpose of the task force is to facilitate the overall work of providing recommendations in the various areas of concern. And we will do that by serving and helping the chairs and co-chairs to identify, research, make recommendations in their subcommittee area of concern. So some of this not going to be long, but I'm repeating myself purposely so that people can catch on. We have newer people on, and sometimes things are just not clear, and we're doing it little by little. So our task force meeting will eventually evolve into a group that receives subcommittee reports and seeks to provide whatever is needed to help that subcommittee achieve its goals. Right now, since the subcommittees really aren't up fully and working, I'm inviting all members. So we're inviting everybody so you can hear this and we all can interact with it. But eventually you'll have subcommittee meetings, and the task force will be entertaining some of those subcommittee reports so that we can see what we need to do to move forward and make sure we have a document and of recommendations by December 2021. If you're not on the task force, but you are a part of subcommittees, I've been getting questions. Your chairs and your co-chairs will begin periodically, and they will begin to have meetings. They will contact you shortly. If they don't contact you in the next couple of weeks, you contact me. We'll make sure that you are connected, that you are where you need to be. If you don't get something, let me know. We got about 100 and something emails, so I'm trying to get all that straightened out. Tamika's been very good with helping me with all of that, and now Katie and Mariah will help. But I plan to meet with the chairs and the co-chairs periodically, and I'm planning a meeting for next Tuesday to try to make sure that they're up and running and getting ready to go. I'm not going to go over the template that was given to the subcommittees, but let me suggest for the subcommittees and for those of you who will be working in the subcommittees, 3 big areas that you need to investigate as areas of concern. Number 1, you ought to go into your area and look at what's working well. What's working well, for instance, in criminal justice? How are things working? What are the things that are good that are already going on? Number 2, what areas of improvements have you identified? When you look at it, if you see a problem or something that needs to be addressed, then you need to be looking at that, investigating it, walking into it, seeing what's going on. And number 3, then how can we help you in your work? What do you need from me, from the task force, that we can facilitate your ability to be able to make recommendations in these areas in order to better what's going on in that particular area in the city of Akron. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is, as you do this work, if you need to talk to a specific part of the city government, we will help you set up appointments to be able to do that. Don't forget, for those of you who are chairs and co-chairs, Mariah and Katie will help you set up your meeting so that and they'll do it for you through Zoom to help you work through that. There are some questions, and we'll talk about this. I don't want to take a lot of time with this tonight, but there will be a stipend that you can receive or reject. It's not going to be a lot. You're not going to be able to go to Florida on it or anything like that. So, but it'll be a little bit of money. But what's happening is, there's about 100 people. The law department is making a contract for each one of us. So that's going to take a little time. When that's done, I will let you know. Let me ask real quickly and then get a few questions. If you've been reading the book Cast, and if you need any interaction from me around that particular book, if you want to have some discussion, we can set up some other things to talk about it. As I told you, some of you don't know this, but it's my issue. I got issues. I read about 50 to 100 books a year, and I've read any number of books on these subjects, and be glad to talk with you about them, interact, help in any way that I can. If you've been reading or you want something, let me know. But we're going to just take a few questions, and then at least you have a better idea of where we are and what's going on.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a, with regards to the recommendations. When I couple that with your definition of racism, which I certainly agree with it is institutionalized, would these recommendations then be, are we pushing for the codification of those recommendations so that they're coded in laws rather than just recommendations?
It's a good question. What we've done is we have gone and gotten this approved in the charter from the city council, and there will be recommendations. We don't have any power to make them happen, but we certainly believe that the process and also the communication along the way is going to give us what we need in order to see some of those recommendations come into fruition. But I think it's a great question. We will talk to the mayor more about that. Certainly, we don't want to just make recommendations and they just sit on the shelf. We want them to have some impact that goes beyond simply recommendations. And I've been in this, Pastor Pounds, I've been in this process before with the Attorney General. And some of our recommendations just got put in the folder. We're going to try to make sure, one of the things that will happen is we have a 5-year report after the recommendation. So we'll be able to come back and review and say what happened or what didn't happen with the recommendation. So that's another good thing, that we don't just pass them and that's it, but we're going to be able to come back. Thank you.
Bishop Johnson, who is the author of the Cast book?
Isabel Wilkerson. She also wrote another wonderful book entitled The Warmth of Other Suns, S-U-N-S.
It's the bomb, y'all. Those are, it's the bomb, B-O-M-B, the bomb.
Great books. By the way, let me just thank y'all while y'all thinking up your question. Every person that has talked to me has been very helpful, very respectful, very excited. It makes it easy to work when people are excited and say, listen, I just want to be a servant. That's exciting. Now, I know some of y'all are a bit tougher than that, but we'll deal with that. It's good. We need everybody.
So Bishop?
Pastor Joe, you may have already answered this, and I apologize if you did, but what is the overall goal that the city is looking for out of the task force and out of each committee?
Each committee is to come up with whatever recommendations we think we ought to have. I think probably about 3 for each committee, because if we overstretch and we try to do too much, we may not be able to accomplish what we want. If we can get 2 or 3 recommendations, good solid recommendations by December 2021, I think we're going to be in good shape. And what we'll be doing is quarterly, or we'll be having meetings every month, but I'll be asking you, what are you accomplishing? Where are you at in the process? So that we have a recommendation report by 2021.
So Bishop, following up on Bruce's comments about the purpose, I do think it would be helpful. There's 5, I think there's 5 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If each committee, when they come with their reports, to separate their recommendations by short, medium, and long-term plans so that we can better
like
pitch
that.
ourselves.
That's good. I like that. I think there's 6, Sister Tracy, but you might not have them all down there. One of them, I think is, let's do it real quick. Criminal justice, education, housing, public health, workforce, and communication.
Okay.
I don't look at them so much, I can do it off the top of my head. For a 68-year-old man, what you think?
Not too bad.
Thanks, Sister Tracy.
I'd like to jump in real quick. Thank everybody for the invite, and Pastor Johnson, Bishop Johnson, for your capable chairing skill sets as
Thank you,
well.
kind sir.
And you're not aging. You know, you say you're 68, but that's not old at all by spiritual standards, as you know.
Thank you. I like you already, sir.
Yeah, years ago, when Bill Clinton came, of course, we had the Coming Together project, and I was watching from the sidelines. I didn't see any substantive progress come from that. And that does not mean there weren't efforts. Ultimately, we're talking about attitudes that harden into beliefs, and then the beliefs become laws. So to change the culture, getting at that root. And right now is a real good time because emotions are running high and people are feeling a lot of different ways. And we have a generation that I see coming up that is not openly acceptive of what their parents have given them on all sides. My children, my children's friends. I have a son and a daughter that went to Hoban, and I would listen to their conversations, and I noticed that there were some trends that were changing. A lot of trends changing on a lot of different themes, primarily with identity and things of that nature. Some I'm okay with, some I'm deeply concerned about, but nevertheless, there are indicators there. So what I guess my point is to do something now. I think we can really build some traction versus 1996 when they had the Coming Together project. And as we all know, in any kind of therapeutic arena, it starts with telling the truth as you understand it. That takes some courage sometimes, and the willingness to be honest, wherever my head is at, and then of course the having enough inner core strength and stability to listen to somebody else. The book that you referenced, I will pick a copy up. I saw Dr. Pounds shaking in agreement, so that means that it must be okay. I trust his judgment.
Amen.
And certainly, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jane Elliott's work. I know that you've at least seen a few videos, but when the whole blue-eyed, brown-eyed piece started after they assassinated Dr. King, she unearthed some pretty important indicators too. But I'm just happy to be on deck. I was listening for some of the parameters that we'll be working around, and a year is not a long time to move the meter on a person's belief system and their thinking. But I think that we can definitely get something done. We just, if we sit around and do nothing, then we know what comes from that,
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I appreciate
I'm
it.
on the streets a lot, and as I'm on the streets, I get a chance to talk to people, and they come to me and tell me things. I try to do more listening than teaching on the streets, so I'll be happy to add that intel to whatever we're doing.
Well, we need that. I want this to be a grassroots effort. We involve those people on the streets, so that's very important. You touched on something I think a lot of people have a question about. I want to touch on it again, and that is when we make our recommendations, what will happen? And I think that we have enough people and enough concern that we can make sure that something does happen. But I also want to talk about it from another perspective. If we don't make any recommendations, if we don't do those things, then we're not taking responsibility of what we have, regardless of whatever anybody does or doesn't do with the recommendations. We want to go on record. We want to make sure that the community knows this is what we think ought to be done. And I think that's going to have an impact in the culture, even at that point that we are making it public. And so I've created added a subgroup that is normally not a part of these efforts, and that's the subgroup of communication. And what the communication subcommittee is attempting to do is create a mechanism to communicate to grassroots people in our city on an ongoing real-time basis what we're working on.
Bishop, if I may call attention to a question which was raised in the chat.
Yes.
I'm going to read the question.
Thank you.
The question is from Burnett Williams, and the question is, a couple of folks have inquired about how they might join subcommittees. Will others be added? And if so, what is the process? Should they reach out to Bishop Joey or to the co-chairs? End of question.
Good question. The subcommittees are not closed. I have been receiving some additional requests of people who want to be a part. I am going to kind of suggest that they reach out to the co-chairs at this point and see how they want to proceed. So I have not been adding them actively, but I've been forwarding them to the chairs and co-chairs so that they could see how they want to use them, if they want to add them to the group, or if they want to use them as a resource. Because at some point, your group is going to get so big, I'm just not sure how effective it's going to be. So yeah, that's the process. I would right now refer them to the co-chairs and go from there. Thank you.
If anyone else is most comfortable asking a question via the chat, please feel welcome to do so. Otherwise, please feel welcome to unmute yourself, as everyone is currently muted except for Bishop and myself. Another question from Tanya. The question reads, what sort of infrastructure will be established to monitor and track outcomes?
That's a good question. Hopefully you're going to get to know me very well. So I answer very honestly, I don't know. Each group is probably going to have to determine how they're going to do that. What Wrestle is going to be doing is providing summaries for us of the meetings. And so what we need to do is, as we look at those, is begin to figure out how we're going to track the outcomes and what outcomes we are specifically looking for. So that, I believe that's a subcommittee perspective and a subcommittee goal that needs to be set. And I imagine each subcommittee might look at this a little bit differently. So I'm open to other suggestions. If you think we need to standardize that, please send me an email and give me some more information. We'll see, we'll make sure we address that. Good question.
Bishop, there is an additional question from Dr. Roderick C. Pounds. The question reads, what is the administrative model of the task force?
That's
Hey,
Pounds,
Joey,
I'm not sure.
You mind if I clarify it too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know how to actually articulate the question.
No problem.
I know there were subcommittees, and then is there an administrative committee, right? I'm not sure just how that.
Yeah. No, that's a good question because it's confusing. The task force was begun with, that's the administrative group, really. But what we've done with the task force is that we're going to take it and probably break it down into a little bit more. And most people on the task force are going to be in a subcommittee. But the administrative group is really the task force. We're going to be able to oversee and come up and make sure that we're on track with recommendations. So that's how it's working. And probably I'm the only one or a few people at the top, maybe Pastor Minner, who are not in a subcommittee. Most everybody else who's on the task force is in a subcommittee also, because we got some work that we got to get done. Now, it's a good question.
There is an additional question from, and please do excuse my mispronunciation, I'm going to try my best, Dana Lawless Andrick. The question reads, thank you. The question reads, if we have not heard from a subcommittee, is there a list available so we know what subcommittee we will serve? Thanks.
Yes, there is a list available. Katie can send out that list to you. I just got another question about who's on the task force. We can send that list to you. We can tell you though, it's fluctuating as the days go by, but we can get that to you, and we'll send it out. Thank you for your question.
Bishop, just a comment for consideration. This is Burnett.
Yeah, hi Burnett.
Hi. This sort of goes in line with the suggestion that Tracy Carter made earlier regarding the subcommittees, and the suggestion that they might submit short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans. We might also consider developing some type of a template for the subcommittees, so that it doesn't mean that it's not flexible in any ways, but that way what comes to this task force will be in a sort of similar format, and it'll give, I think, the subcommittee some guidance as well to that question of outcomes, or if they, have concerns that need to be elevated to this group, or even if they, have resource related issues, we're kind of capturing similar information from each. So that may be something for us to consider as well.
Burnett, thank you. That's an excellent suggestion. We do have a template. I didn't give it tonight, but we probably are still going to need some more work on that template. So when you see it, please feel free to help us out with that. And we need to have some similar write-ups so that we're not all over the place doing that. So, and we can make that available to you too.
And if I can help in any way, I will. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your willingness to help.
Bishop, there is a comment and then a question. Dr. Pound said, could you please let the mayor know how pleased I am that he has initiated this courageous effort?
I certainly will. One of the things that I have done with the mayor is I'm not sure that people understand he doesn't have to do this. There's no pressure to do this. He has chosen to do this because he wants to do this. And I don't see many other cities doing kind of what we're doing. I think this is very unique, may end up being a model for other cities. So I'm really excited about that. And I'll certainly transmit that to him. Thank you.
There's a question, is there a reason why all task force members will not be assigned to a subcommittee?
It's a good question. Simply because some of us that are doing some of the administrative functions are not going to have time to be in the task force and also or in a subcommittee and also do the task force work. So for instance, I've been putting a lot of time into this. If I was on a subcommittee, I'm not sure I could pull it off. Just talking to all the folks, talking to all the chairs, co-chairs. So that's the reason. It's just, it would be difficult for some of us who are doing the administrative function. Thank you for your question.
There's also a question from Pastor Jenkins. Is everyone in the meeting today on the task force or our subcommittee individuals here also? I can just mention that the chairs of every subcommittee were invited via email to this meeting. I am still in the process of taking attendance, especially since not everybody has their names, so I'm kind of guessing. But every committee chair was invited to this meeting, as well as every member of the task force from an administrative perspective. Bishop, of course, add if you'd like.
Thank you.
Another question, is there a common vision for what we want to achieve in terms of undoing racism in Akron by 2026?
Yes. One of the things we've been trying to do is create a greater communication and trust between government and the people of the city. We want to create a greater diversity. We want to create greater upward lift to people who need to be better jobs and better opportunities. So yeah, some of that is written in the original material that was passed out. If you did not get that, we'll give it to you because there are some specific goals and realities that we are looking at. It's a part of the original material that I sent out. Good question. That's important.
Carla Davis mentions that C-SPAN interviewed Isabel Wilkerson about her latest book, Cast, on September 22nd. If you visit cspan.org and enter her name, the interview is available.
Great.
With that, I've looked at all of the written questions and comments, but anyone can feel welcome to unmute themselves and ask their own question if they like.
Okay. If you don't have any more, I'm going to go ahead and then I don't want to take up your time. I'm very sensitive to people's time and and all of you are important people in the city. You have important responsibilities. So I will be very respectful of your time. I'll get on. I'll say what I'm going to say and I'll get off. If you need me to stay on or you need other questions, I'm glad to do that. But I'm not going to just stay on just to be on. I like to hear myself talk. but I got a church and other places I can do that. I want you to get the most out of these meetings, and I want them to be short and sweet and informative and directed. I want to thank all of you who are on tonight, and also I want to thank you for your heart, for your heart to work at this. I want to thank you for your attitudes for doing this and how you've been responding to me. I hope that I'm modeling, and I'm going to be modeling all along how I want to interact. This doesn't mean we won't have difficult discussion. It doesn't mean we won't have disagreements and we need to deal with them, but we're going to respect one another and have a certain degree of civility that I think we've lost in this country. And it burdens me, it saddens me, but it is where we are. We'll do the best we can with it. But we want the city of Akron to be different, and we're doing this for a better Akron. So I just want to thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to work with all of you, and I look forward to the coming meetings and the things that we'll be doing. God bless you. Have a good evening. Probably next Tuesday, we'll set up, Katie will send out something, or Mariah, for the chairs and co-chairs. And then the next meeting is the second Tuesday of December. And we'll let you know about that. Thank you this evening for being on. Have a great evening. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thanks, Bishop.
Thank you. Everyone have a good evening.
Okay, everybody have a good evening. You all be safe.
Yes, sir.
Good night, everyone. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, what's up, Pastor?
Everything's good. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man.
Hey, look at